Have you ever experienced a Christmas morning that broke your heart and filled it with more love than you thought possible, all at the same time? Well, hello there, my dear friends. Come settle in with your favorite cup of coffee or tea, perhaps near a window where the winter light streams in just so, creating that peaceful atmosphere where stories feel safe to unfold and hearts feel ready to listen. I'm Joe, though my grandchildren have long since started calling me Gramps Joe, which makes me feel both ancient and deeply honored. And I'm grateful beyond measure that you've chosen to spend part of your day here with me in this little sanctuary we've created together. You know, at Skiff, I've come to understand that some of life's most profound gifts arrive disguised as our greatest disappointments, wrapped up in moments of such apparent failure that we're convinced we've let down everyone we love most. Today, I want to share with you a story about a Christmas morning in 1982, a Christmas so financially devastating, so utterly devoid of the material trappings we thought defined the holiday, that I spent Christmas Eve convinced I had failed as a husband and father in the most fundamental way possible. It's a story about unwrapping newspaper-covered rocks under our modest tree, about discovering that my wife Sarah had somehow transformed our poverty into our most precious Christmas gift, about learning that the deepest expressions of love often require no money at all, just creativity, courage, and a heart willing to see abundance where the world sees only lack. But more than that, it's a story about discovering that the moments when we feel we have nothing to give are often the moments when we discover what we truly have to offer. And that the Christmas mornings that break our hearts with their simplicity can heal our souls with their profound truth about what really matters. If these conversations we share bring you comfort during quiet moments, perhaps remind you of your own experiences with finding joy in unexpected places, or simply provide a gentle voice when the holiday seasons feel too commercial and too complicated, I would be deeply honored if you'd consider joining our growing family of friends here. And your presence tells me that these stories have value, that the lessons we've gathered through decades of loving, struggling, and sometimes discovering magic in the most unlikely circumstances can offer genuine guidance to others walking similar paths. Now, let me take you back to a time that feels both like yesterday and several lifetimes ago. A snowy December evening in 1982, when I sat in our tiny living room surrounded by Christmas decorations we couldn't afford to replace and gifts we couldn't afford to buy, completely unaware that I was about to witness the kind of Christmas miracle that has nothing to do with money and everything to do with the human capacity to transform love into something visible, tangible, and unforgettable. Picture, if you will, a young man of 30 sitting on a second-hand couch that had seen better days, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking with the weight of what felt like complete failure as a provider and protector. That young man was me. And I was drowning in the kind of despair that comes from wanting desperately to give your family the Christmas you think they deserve, while facing the harsh reality that wanting and being able to provide are two entirely different things. The year 1982 had been what economists politely called a recession, but what our family experienced as a relentless series of financial setbacks that left us struggling to meet basic needs, let alone holiday expectations. And I worked as an assistant manager at Morrison Electronics, a small appliance repair shop on the south side of Chicago, making barely enough to cover rent, utilities, and groceries when everything went according to plan, which, in 1982, nothing seemed to do. Sarah was 28 then, a part-time nurse who had reduced her hours when our daughter Emma was born 2 years earlier, followed by our son Michael just 10 months ago. She contributed what she could through the weekend shifts at the local clinic, but childcare costs and the demands of caring for 2 babies under 3 meant that her income barely covered the expenses it created. We were living in a small 2-bedroom apartment in a building that had been elegant in the 1940s, but had settled into the kind of dignified shabbiness that working families could afford. The radiators clanged through the night. The windows let in drafts that no amount of plastic sheeting could completely seal. and the kitchen linoleum was worn through to the subfloor in places where generations of tenants had stood washing dishes and preparing modest meals. But for all its shortcomings, that little apartment was home. Sarah had hung cheerful curtains that she'd sewn herself from fabric remnants, arranged furniture in ways that maximized both function and warmth, and created the kind of cozy environment where children could grow safely and parents could dream of better days ahead. The Christmas season had arrived with all its usual commercial fanfare, but for our family, the holiday advertisements and store displays served only as painful reminders of all the things we couldn't provide. Every toy commercial that delighted Emma, every mention of holiday bonuses or Christmas shopping budgets, every festive display in shop windows we passed during our rare ventures into the commercial areas of the city, all of these normal seasonal experiences had become sources of stress and guilt rather than joy and anticipation. I had been working overtime whenever it was available, taking on extra repair jobs during evenings and weekends, even attempting to find seasonal employment to supplement our regular income. But the economic downturn that characterized 1982 meant that extra work was scarce. Overtime hours were limited, and seasonal positions were being filled by people with more experience and fewer family responsibilities than I could claim. By mid-December, it had become painfully clear that we would not have money for Christmas presents, not the modest gifts we had managed in previous years, not even the small toys and practical items that had filled our children's stockings when finances were merely tight rather than desperate. We were facing the very real possibility of a Christmas morning with nothing under the tree, nothing in the stockings, nothing tangible to mark the holiday that meant so much to children and to the parents who loved them. The weight of this reality was crushing. I had grown up in a family where Christmas morning was magical, where the tree was surrounded by carefully wrapped packages that represented months of saving and planning, where the joy of giving and receiving created memories that lasted throughout the year. My parents had not been wealthy, but they had managed to provide Christmas mornings that felt abundant, generous, and full of the kind of love that expresses itself through thoughtful gift-giving. Sarah had similar memories from her childhood. Christmas mornings that began before dawn with excited children racing to see what Santa had brought, followed by hours of unwrapping presents, reading cards, and sharing the kind of family breakfast that turned the entire day into a celebration of love, generosity, and gratitude. We both wanted desperately to create those same magical experiences for Emma and Michael. But Emma was only 2 and Michael was just 10 months old, and they were too young to have developed specific expectations about Christmas presents, too young to feel disappointed by the absence of elaborate gifts, too young to understand the economic pressures that made this Christmas different from others. But I was not too young to feel the weight of what I perceived as my failure as a provider. And I was not too innocent to imagine neighbors and relatives quietly discussing our obvious financial struggles. I was not too naive to worry about the long-term implications of starting our children's Christmas memories with a holiday marked by absence rather than abundance. The pressure was constant and overwhelming. It affected my sleep, my ability to concentrate at work, my interactions with Sarah and the children. I found myself snapping at small irritations, brooding over financial calculations that never seemed to add up to enough, and generally behaving like someone who had forgotten that Christmas was supposed to be about joy rather than stress. Poorest, meanwhile, seemed to be handling our circumstances with a grace and creativity that both inspired and mystified me. While I was consumed with worry about what we couldn't provide, she was focused on creating the kind of warm, loving environment that made our little apartment feel festive despite our financial limitations. And she had made Christmas decorations from materials we already had. Paper snowflakes cut from old magazines. Garlands created from popcorn we popped on the stove. Ornaments fashioned from bits of fabric and ribbon saved from previous projects. She had been playing Christmas music on our old radio, singing carols while she cooked dinner, and generally maintaining the kind of cheerful holiday spirit that seemed impossible under our circumstances. "Joe," she said one evening about a week before Christmas, as we sat together after putting the children to bed, "I know you're worried about presents, but I think we need to remember what Christmas is really about." Her comment was gentle but pointed, delivered with the kind of loving directness that characterized our best communication. She wasn't criticizing my concerns or dismissing the very real disappointment we both felt about not being able to provide traditional gifts. And she was simply reminding me that our focus might be misplaced. "I know what Christmas is about," I replied, perhaps more defensively than I intended. "But Emma is 2 years old. She's old enough to notice if there's nothing under the tree. She's old enough to wonder why Santa didn't come to our house." Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering my concerns with the thoughtful attention she brought to all our family discussions. "You're right that she'll notice," she said finally. "But I don't think she'll notice the absence of expensive toys as much as she'll notice the presence or absence of joy, love, and celebration." Her words carried a wisdom that I wasn't quite ready to hear at the time. I was too focused on the practical aspects of Christmas, the presents, the stockings, the material expressions of love and generosity that I thought were essential to a proper holiday celebration. But Sarah was thinking about Christmas in more fundamental terms. She was considering the emotional atmosphere we created, the quality of attention we gave our children, the warmth and love that filled our home regardless of what was or wasn't wrapped under the tree. As Christmas approached, I continued to struggle with feelings of inadequacy and failure, made last-minute attempts to earn extra money, considered borrowing from family members who were dealing with their own financial challenges, and generally exhausted myself with worry about a situation I couldn't change through worry alone. Sarah, meanwhile, was planning something that I wouldn't understand until Christmas morning, something that would transform my understanding of gift-giving, creativity, and the true meaning of abundance in the context of love and family. And on Christmas Eve, after we had put Emma and Michael to bed and completed our modest preparations for the morning, I sat in our living room feeling utterly defeated. The tree, a small pine that a local lot owner had given us free because it was slightly asymmetrical, was decorated with our homemade ornaments and a few treasured pieces from our early married years, and it looked cheerful and festive. But the space beneath it was heartbreakingly empty. "Sarah," I said, my voice heavy with the disappointment I could no longer contain, "I'm so sorry. I know this isn't the Christmas you wanted for the children. I know I've let you down." She looked at me with an expression of surprise mixed with something that might have been gentle amusement. "Joe, you haven't let me down. You've been working incredibly hard under very difficult circumstances. There's no shame in facing financial challenges that are beyond your control. But the children are healthy, safe, and loved." She interrupted gently. "They have parents who adore them, a warm home, and a family that will celebrate Christmas together when they have everything that matters most." Her words were comforting, but they didn't eliminate the guilt and disappointment I felt about the absence of presents under our tree. I had been raised to believe that Christmas morning should be magical, abundant, and full of the kind of surprises that created lasting memories. An empty tree felt like a fundamental failure to provide the kind of childhood experiences I wanted for Emma and Michael. Sarah seemed to understand my continued distress because she moved closer to me on the couch and took my hand with the kind of gentle firmness that characterized her approach to our most difficult conversations. "Joe, I want you to trust me about tomorrow morning," she said, her voice carrying a mixture of confidence and mystery that I couldn't quite interpret. "I know it's hard to believe right now, but I think tomorrow is going to be a very special Christmas. Maybe not the Christmas we planned, but the Christmas we need." Her tone suggested that she knew something I didn't, that she had been preparing something beyond the decorations and homemade ornaments that we had created together. But I couldn't imagine what she might have planned that would transform our circumstances or create the kind of magical Christmas morning that seemed so impossible given our financial reality. "What do you mean?" I asked, searching her face for clues about what she might be planning. "You'll see tomorrow," she said with a smile that was both reassuring and enigmatic. "Just trust me. And try to remember that the best gifts often have nothing to do with money." That night, I lay awake long after Sarah had fallen asleep, wondering what she could possibly have planned that would make Christmas morning feel complete and magical despite our obvious limitations. I knew she was creative and resourceful, but I couldn't conceive of anything that would satisfy my deep desire to provide a proper Christmas for our children without the financial resources that seemed essential for traditional gift-giving. I fell asleep sometime after midnight, still worried about the disappointment that Christmas morning would bring, still feeling like I had failed to provide the kind of holiday experience that good fathers were supposed to create for their families. Christmas morning arrived with the kind of gentle winter light that filters through curtains and creates a soft, peaceful atmosphere even in the most modest of circumstances. I woke to the sound of Emma chattering in her crib, her voice filled with the excitement that children bring to special occasions even when they don't fully understand what makes the day different from others. Was already awake, sitting on the edge of our bed with an expression of anticipation that seemed both nervous and excited. "Merry Christmas, I'm Joe," she said softly, leaning over to kiss my forehead. "Are you ready for a very special morning?" Her tone carried the same mysterious confidence she had displayed the night before. But I still couldn't imagine what she had planned that would transform our empty tree into the kind of Christmas morning that would feel complete and magical. We got Emma and Michael dressed in their best clothes, outfits that Sarah had pressed carefully the night before so they would look fresh and festive for Christmas morning. Emma was old enough to sense the excitement of the day, bouncing and chattering as we prepared to go into the living room where our tree waited. Michael, at 10 months old, was mostly interested in the colorful decorations and the general excitement in the air. But his smiles and babbling added to the festive atmosphere that Sarah had been carefully creating throughout the holiday season. As we walked toward the living room, I braced myself for the disappointment of seeing our beautiful tree surrounded by empty space where presents should have been. I had prepared myself to maintain a cheerful demeanor for the children's sake, to focus on the decorations and music rather than the absence of gifts, to somehow create a sense of celebration despite what felt like fundamental inadequacy. But when we entered the living room, I stopped in absolute amazement. The space under our tree, which had been empty when we went to bed the night before, was now filled with packages. Not many packages, but enough to create the kind of visual abundance that makes Christmas morning feel magical and complete. The packages were wrapped in newspaper rather than traditional Christmas paper, tied with ribbons that Sarah had saved from previous occasions, and each one was labeled with careful handwriting that identified it as a gift for a specific family member. There were packages for Emma, packages for Michael, packages for me, and even packages that were labeled as being from the children to Sarah and to me. I stared at the scene in complete confusion. "Sarah, where did these come from? We didn't have money for presents." She smiled with the kind of quiet satisfaction that comes from successfully orchestrating a meaningful surprise. "I told you to trust me," she said gently. "These presents didn't cost any money, but I think they might be the most valuable gifts we've ever given each other." I looked more closely at the packages, trying to understand how Sarah could have created gifts without spending money we didn't have. The shapes were unusual. Some packages were round, others were oddly angular, and a few seemed to contain items that were heavier than typical toys or household goods. "Put on," Sarah suggested, her voice filled with anticipation and what might have been slight nervousness about how I would respond to whatever she had planned. Picked up a package that was labeled as being for me from Emma, unwrapped the newspaper carefully, and discovered inside a smooth, rounded stone about the size of my palm. Attached to the stone with a small piece of ribbon was a folded piece of paper with Sarah's handwriting. I opened the note and read, "This rock is strong and steady, just like your love for our family. Even when everything else feels uncertain, Tom, we can always count on you to be our foundation. Emma loves you for working so hard to take care of us, for reading her bedtime stories even when you're tired, and for the way you make her laugh when she's fussy. This rock will remind you that your love is the strongest gift you give us every day." I stared at the note, reading it twice to make sure I understood what Sarah had done. She had taken an ordinary stone, probably from the small garden area behind our apartment building, and transformed it into a gift by attaching a message that expressed gratitude for qualities that had nothing to do with money or material possessions. The creativity was stunning. But more than that, the thoughtfulness was overwhelming. She had taken time to consider what I provided for our family beyond financial support, to recognize contributions that I had been taking for granted, and to express appreciation in a way that was both tangible and deeply personal. "Open another one," Sarah said, watching my face carefully as I processed what she had created. I picked up a package labeled for Sarah from me, unwrapped it, and found another stone. This one smaller and more delicate, with its own attached note that read, "This rock is beautiful and precious. Just like the way you make our home feel warm and loving, even when we don't have much money. Iko loves you for the songs you sing while you feed him, for the way you make everything feel safe and cozy, and for how you always find ways to make ordinary days feel special. This rock will remind you that your creativity and love make our family rich in all the ways that matter." I looked up at Sarah, who was watching me with an expression that mixed hope with uncertainty, clearly waiting to see whether I would understand and appreciate what she had attempted to create. "Sarah," I said, my voice catching as I began to understand the magnitude of what she had done. This is incredible. How did you think of this?" "I was lying awake one night, worrying about Christmas just like you were," she said, settling down beside me on the floor near the tree. "And I started thinking about what we do have instead of what we don't have. We have love, we have gratitude, we have so many things to appreciate about each other and about our life together," she punted, reaching for one of Emma's packages and beginning to unwrap it. I realized that the most meaningful gifts I've ever received weren't necessarily the most expensive ones. They were the ones that made me feel seen, appreciated, and loved for who I really am. Yep, and inside Emma's package was another stone, with a note that read, "This rock is small but mighty, just like you are. You bring so much joy to our family with your giggles, your hugs, and the way you dance to music on the radio. Daddy and Mommy love watching you discover new things every day, and we're so grateful that you chose us to be your family. This rock will remind you that you are precious and loved beyond measure." Iko's package contained a similar stone with a note about his sweet baby smiles, his contentment in being held and loved, and the way his presence had completed our family in ways we hadn't even known we needed. But the packages didn't stop with individual gifts. Sarah had created family packages, stones that represented our home, our health, our ability to be together during difficult times, our dreams for the future, and our gratitude for the basic necessities that we sometimes took for granted when we were focused on what we lacked rather than what we possessed. Each stone was accompanied by a note that identified specific reasons for gratitude, particular qualities to appreciate, or shared memories that had created joy without requiring any financial investment. The notes mentioned bedtime stories, family dinners around our small kitchen table, weekend walks in the park that cost nothing but created precious family time, and countless small moments of love and connection that had filled our days with meaning, even during our most financially challenging period. As we continued unwrapping these extraordinary gifts, I began to understand that Sarah had created something far more valuable than any store-bought presents could have been. She had taken time to observe and articulate the ways that each family member contributed to our collective happiness, to identify qualities worth celebrating, and to express gratitude for the abundant love that existed in our family despite our limited financial resources. Emma was fascinated by the stones themselves, which were smooth and pretty and perfect for a 2-year-old to hold and examine. She didn't yet understand the concept of reading the notes, but she loved the stones and the attention and the general excitement of having packages to unwrap on Christmas morning. Iko was equally delighted with the textures and colors of his stones, using them as toys to examine and mouth in the way that 10-month-old babies explore new objects. And for both children, the stones provided sensory interest and play value that was every bit as engaging as traditional toys would have been. But for Sarah and me, the stones represented something profoundly meaningful about how to recognize abundance in the midst of apparent scarcity, how to express love in ways that cost nothing but thoughtfulness and creativity, and how to create meaningful traditions that celebrate the values and qualities that truly matter in family life. As Christmas morning continued, we spent time reading all the notes aloud, talking about the qualities and memories that Sarah had identified, and sharing stories about moments of bond and connection that we might otherwise have forgotten or taken for granted. And the experience was both humbling and elevating. Humbling because it revealed how much of our holiday stress had been focused on material expressions of love rather than the love itself. Elevating because it demonstrated the power of creativity, to gratitude and intentional attention to transform the most modest circumstances into something rich with meaning and beauty. But the most powerful aspect of that Christmas morning wasn't the individual gifts or even the creative solution to our financial limitations. It was the recognition that Sarah had given us a new way of thinking about abundance, gift giving, and the true foundations of family happiness. By focusing on gratitude for what we already possessed, rather than disappointment about what we couldn't afford, she had shifted our entire family's perspective on what constituted a meaningful Christmas. By expressing appreciation for qualities like love, dedication, creativity, and value rather than focusing on material acquisitions, she had reminded us that the most valuable gifts are often intangible. Most importantly, by taking the time to observe and articulate specific reasons for gratitude, she had created a Christmas tradition that would influence our family's approach to holidays, gift giving, and expressions of love for decades to come. That Christmas morning extended well beyond the unwrapping of presents. We spent the rest of the day talking about the notes, playing with the stones, and generally enjoying the kind of relaxed, focused family time that often gets lost in the excitement and chaos of traditional Christmas celebrations. We made a simple breakfast together, with Emma helping to stir pancake batter and Michael watching from his high chair with the fascination that babies bring to any family activity. We listened to Christmas music on the radio, looked through a picture book about Christmas traditions, and generally created the kind of warm, cozy atmosphere that Sarah had been cultivating throughout the holiday season. But most memorably, we talked about the qualities and memories that the stones represented. Sarah's notes had identified so many specific moments of joy and connection that we might otherwise have forgotten. The way Emma danced when she heard music, the satisfaction I found in fixing broken appliances at work, the contentment Michael showed when he was held and sung to, the pleasure Sarah took in creating a welcoming home environment despite our modest resources. And these conversations helped us recognize patterns of happiness and fulfillment that had been present in our daily life all along, but which we had been overlooking in our focus on financial challenges and material limitations. We began to see that our family life was already rich with the kinds of experiences and connections that money couldn't buy, and that formed the foundation of lasting happiness. As the day progressed, I found myself thinking about Christmas celebrations from my childhood and comparing them to the morning we had just experienced. I remembered the excitement of unwrapping presents, the pleasure of receiving toys and clothes that I had wanted, and the general abundance that characterized Christmas in our household when I was growing up. But I also remembered that the most treasured memories from those childhood Christmases weren't really about the presents themselves. They were about the sense of being loved and valued, the pleasure of family time and shared traditions, the feeling that Christmas was a special occasion when ordinary rules were suspended and family connections took priority over everything else. Sarah's stone gifts had created exactly those feelings, but they had done so by focusing directly on love, appreciation, and family connection rather than approaching those qualities indirectly through material expressions. The notes attached to each stone had articulated feelings that we all experienced but rarely took time to express, creating a depth of emotional connection that traditional gift-giving sometimes missed entirely. That evening, after we had put Emma and Michael to bed and were sitting together in our living room, surrounded by newspaper wrapping and carefully collected stones. I tried to express to Sarah how profoundly her Christmas morning creativity had affected me. "Sarah," I said, struggling to find words adequate to the gratitude I felt. "What you did this morning was the most thoughtful, creative, and loving gift I've ever received. And you took our worst Christmas situation and turned it into something more meaningful than any Christmas we've ever had." She smiled with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had taken a significant risk and discovered that it had paid off beyond her expectations. "I was worried that you might think it was silly, or that you'd be disappointed because they weren't real presents." "They were real presents," I said emphatically. "They were more real than anything we could have bought in a store. You gave us a way to see our family and our life together that was more honest and more beautiful than how we usually think about ourselves." Priya reached for one of the stones, the one whose note had described her as the foundation of our family's warmth and creativity, and turned it over in her hands thoughtfully. "I think I learned something too," she said. "I learned that we actually have so much to be grateful for that it was easy to fill all those notes, and I could have written twice as many stones and still had more to say about what we have to appreciate." Her comment revealed one of the most powerful aspects of what she had created. The exercise of identifying specific reasons for gratitude had made visible an abundance that had been present all along, but which we had been overlooking in our focus on what we perceived as lacking. And this shift in perspective, from scarcity to abundance, from what we couldn't afford to what we already possessed, from material expressions of love to love itself, would prove to be one of the most transformative lessons of our married life. In the days following Christmas, we found ourselves continuing to notice and comment on the qualities and moments that Sarah's notes had identified. We began to see our daily life through the lens of gratitude rather than worry, to appreciate ordinary moments as expressions of the love and connection that her stones had celebrated. Emma, who was too young to understand the full significance of what had happened, nonetheless seemed to absorb the general atmosphere of appreciation and contentment that characterized our post-Christmas conversations. She continued to play with her stones, carrying them around the apartment and occasionally bringing them to us as if to share the joy they represented. Michael, of course, was primarily interested in the stones as objects to examine and explore, but even his play seemed to contribute to the ongoing presence of Sarah's gift in our daily family life. And most importantly, the experience had provided a template for how to approach future financial challenges, holiday celebrations, and expressions of love within our family. I had to learn that creativity and thoughtfulness could create abundance even in the absence of money. That gratitude could transform perspective on circumstances that initially seemed inadequate, and that the most meaningful gifts often required time and attention rather than financial resources. This lesson would prove invaluable in the months and years that followed, as we continued to face various financial challenges but no longer experienced them as threats to our ability to create meaningful family experiences or to express love for each other in tangible ways. When Emma's third birthday arrived in the spring, we used Sarah's Christmas strategy to create a celebration that focused on appreciation for her growth, development, and unique personality rather than expensive toys or elaborate party preparations. We made decorations from materials we already had, prepared simple foods that she enjoyed, and created gifts that celebrated specific qualities we loved about her. And when our financial situation improved the following year and we could afford more traditional presents, we chose to continue incorporating Sarah's gratitude-focused approach into our gift giving. Store-bought presents were accompanied by notes that expressed appreciation for specific qualities, shared memories, or reasons for love that went beyond material expressions. This combination of traditional and creative gift giving created a family culture that valued both generosity and thoughtfulness, both material expressions of love and direct articulation of appreciation and gratitude. As our children grew older and began to understand the story of their Christmas of stones, they absorbed the lesson that meaningful gifts could take many forms and that the most valuable presents were those that made people feel seen, appreciated, and loved for who they truly were. Emma, in particular, showed remarkable creativity in applying this principle to her own gift-giving as she reached school age. She made handmade cards that included specific observations about what she appreciated in her friends, created art projects that celebrated family memories, and generally demonstrated an understanding that thoughtful attention was more valuable than expensive purchases. Bickle developed similar habits as he grew, showing particular talent for identifying qualities in people that deserved recognition and appreciation. His natural inclination toward kindness seemed to be enhanced by growing up in a family culture that regularly practiced the kind of intentional gratitude that Sarah's Christmas stones had introduced. But the influence of that Christmas morning extended far beyond our immediate family relationships. The experience had taught us principles about recognizing abundance, expressing appreciation, and finding creative solutions to apparent limitations that proved valuable in many other areas of life. When we faced housing challenges a few years later, we applied the same approach of focusing on what our living situation provided rather than what it lacked, leading to creative solutions and increased contentment with our circumstances. And when career setbacks created new financial pressures, we used the gratitude perspective to identify resources and opportunities that we might otherwise have overlooked, leading to innovative approaches to income generation and expense management. When health challenges affected our family, we drew on the same principles to focus on available support systems, existing strengths, and reasons for hope rather than becoming overwhelmed by limitations and difficulties. But most importantly, the Christmas of Stones had provided a foundation for marriage communication that emphasized appreciation and gratitude rather than criticism and complaint. Sarah and I learned to regularly identify and express specific reasons for thankfulness about each other, creating a relationship dynamic that supported growth and resilience during difficult periods. This habit of intentional appreciation became one of the cornerstones of our marriage, influencing how we handled disagreements, supported each other through challenges, and maintained connection during busy periods when it would have been easy to take each other for granted. As I share this story with you today, my dear friends, I'm struck by how the lessons from that December morning in 1982 continue to influence my approach to gratitude, abundance, and meaningful gift-giving more than 40 years later. The financial crisis that had seemed so devastating at the time became the catalyst for discovering a form of wealth that no economic downturn could threaten. The wealth that comes from recognizing and appreciating the love, connection, and small daily miracles that fill our lives when we have eyes to see them. Sarah's creativity in transforming ordinary stones into extraordinary gifts taught us that abundance is often a matter of perspective rather than circumstance, that the most valuable presents are those that help people feel valued and appreciated, and that the Christmas spirit has more to do with love and gratitude than with spending and acquisition. But perhaps the most enduring lesson from that Christmas morning was the recognition that some of life's most meaningful experiences emerge from our apparent limitations rather than our obvious strengths. The financial pressure that had made traditional gift-giving impossible had created space for Sarah to develop an approach to Christmas that was more thoughtful, more personal, and ultimately more meaningful than anything we could have purchased. This principle, that constraints can foster creativity, that limitations can lead to innovations, that apparent scarcity can reveal hidden abundance, has proven valuable in countless situations throughout our married life and into our retirement years. And when aging has required us to adjust our expectations and approaches to various activities, we have used the Christmas stone perspective to focus on what remains possible rather than what has become difficult, leading to new forms of enjoyment and fulfillment that we might never have discovered if circumstances had not required creative adaptation. When fixed retirement incomes have necessitated careful financial planning, we have applied Sarah's gratitude approach to appreciate what our resources can provide rather than focusing on what we cannot afford, leading to a sense of contentment and abundance that many of our peers struggle to achieve despite greater financial resources. When health challenges have required lifestyle modifications, We have drawn on the lesson that meaningful experiences often require creativity and attention rather than money and physical capacity, leading to new forms of connection and joy that are accessible even within our current limitations. And most importantly, the Christmas of Stones established a family tradition of appreciating the intangible gifts that people provide simply by being who they are and loving as they do. This perspective has enriched our relationships with adult children, enhanced our friendships with peers, and generally created an approach to human connection that focuses on gratitude and appreciation rather than expectation and judgment. The Stones themselves have become family treasures that we still possess more than 4 decades later. They sit in a special box in our bedroom, along with the carefully preserved notes that Sarah wrote to accompany each one, occasionally, particularly during holiday seasons or family celebrations. We take them out and read the notes aloud, remembering not just that Christmas morning in 1982, but the profound lessons about love, creativity, and abundance that emerged from our apparent poverty. Emma and Michael, now adults with children of their own, have incorporated versions of Sarah's Stone tradition into their own family celebrations. They understand that the most meaningful gifts are often those that express appreciation for qualities that money cannot buy, and that the Christmas spirit is more about recognizing and sharing the love that already exists than about creating love through expensive purchases. Our grandchildren are growing up with an understanding that presents can take many forms, that creativity and thoughtfulness are more valuable than cost and elaborate wrapping, and that the best gifts are those that make people feel seen, appreciated, and loved for who they truly are. But the influence of that Christmas morning extends beyond our immediate family to the broader community of friends and neighbors who have heard this story over the years and been inspired to develop their own approaches to meaningful gift-giving and intentional gratitude. I have shared this story at church gatherings, community events, and informal conversations with friends who were facing their own financial challenges during holiday seasons. Without exception, people have responded with recognition and appreciation for the principles that Sarah's creativity had revealed. Many have adapted the Stone tradition to their own circumstances, creating variations that express gratitude and appreciation in ways that fit their particular family dynamics and creative inclinations. Others have simply absorbed the general principle that meaningful gifts require thoughtfulness rather than money, leading to more intentional and less stressful approaches to holiday celebrations. And importantly, the story has served as a reminder that some of our most cherished family memories emerge from the times when we felt we had the least to offer, when we were forced to rely on creativity and love rather than resources and conventional solutions. For those of you who may be facing your own financial challenges during holiday seasons, who worry about your ability to provide the kind of Christmas experiences you think your families deserve, who feel pressure to express love through expensive purchases that strain your budgets and create stress rather than joy, I hope Sarah's Christmas morning creativity will offer both inspiration and practical guidance. The gift of gratitude that she created by focusing on what we already possessed rather than what we couldn't afford is available to any family willing to take the time to observe and appreciate the abundance that exists in relationships characterized by love, commitment, and mutual support. The creative approach to gift giving that she pioneered by expressing appreciation for intangible qualities rather than providing material acquisitions can be adapted to any family's circumstances and preferences, requiring only thoughtfulness, creativity, and willingness to articulate feelings that we often experience but rarely take time to express. Most importantly, the perspective shift from scarcity to abundance that emerged from her Christmas Stone strategy can transform not just holiday celebrations, but entire approaches to family life, financial challenges, and the countless daily opportunities to choose gratitude over complaint, appreciation over criticism, and recognition of existing blessings over focus on apparent limitations. Your financial circumstances, whatever they may be, do not determine your family's capacity for meaningful Christmas experiences or expressions of love that create lasting memories. The most treasured gifts are often those that cost nothing but time, attention, and willingness to notice and articulate the qualities that make each family member precious and irreplaceable in your creative potential. Whatever your artistic background or previous experience with handmade gifts is sufficient to develop approaches to holiday celebrations that are more personal, more meaningful, and ultimately more satisfying than anything available through traditional commercial channels. Your love for your family, expressed through intentional attention and thoughtful appreciation, is the most valuable gift you have to offer and the foundation upon which all truly meaningful holiday experiences are built. The Christmas that we thought would be our worst became our most treasured, not because our circumstances improved, but because Sarah's creativity helped us see our circumstances more clearly. The stones that seemed like symbols of our poverty became emblems of our wealth when they were accompanied by notes that articulated the abundance of love, gratitude, and appreciation that characterized our family relationships. The holiday season that had filled me with anxiety and feelings of failure became a celebration of discovery about what we truly possessed and what really mattered in creating the kind of family experiences that children remember and cherish throughout their lives. Your current Christmas challenges, whatever they may be, contain the seeds of similar discoveries about the abundance that exists within your family relationships, the creativity that emerges when conventional options are not available, and the deep satisfaction that comes from expressing love through thoughtfulness and attention, rather than expense and elaborate preparation. Trust in your capacity to create meaningful holiday experiences, regardless of your financial resources. Have confidence in your family's ability to appreciate expressions of love that cost nothing but time and creative energy. And remember that the Christmas spirit has more to do with recognizing and sharing the love that already exists than with creating love through expensive acquisitions. The stones that Sarah wrapped in newspaper more than 40 years ago continue to remind us that the most valuable gifts are often the most simple, that abundance is more about perspective than circumstance, and that creativity and love can transform any situation into an opportunity for meaning, connection, and joy. As we moved into the new year of 1983, the lessons from our Christmas of Stones continued to influence our family life in ways that extended far beyond holiday celebrations. The experience had fundamentally changed how we thought about abundance, creativity, and the expression of love within our family relationships. Sarah had demonstrated that meaningful gift-giving required thoughtfulness rather than money, that gratitude could transform perspective on circumstances that initially seemed inadequate, and that some of the most treasured family experiences emerge from apparent limitations rather than obvious advantages. These principles proved valuable as we faced ongoing financial challenges throughout the early 1980s. Instead of viewing our modest circumstances as obstacles to family happiness, we began to see them as opportunities to develop creativity, strengthen our appreciation for simple pleasures, and focus on the aspects of family life that truly contributed to lasting contentment and connection. So the stone tradition became a regular part of our family celebrations, not just during Christmas, but for birthdays, anniversaries, and other occasions when we wanted to express appreciation in ways that went beyond conventional gift-giving. Each family member learned to identify and articulate qualities they appreciated in others, creating a family culture that regularly practiced intentional gratitude and specific appreciation. Emma, as she grew older, became particularly skilled at this kind of thoughtful observation. By the time she reached school age, she was creating handmade gifts for friends and teachers that included specific observations about qualities she appreciated in them. Her natural inclination toward kindness seemed to be enhanced by growing up in a family that regularly practiced the art of noticing and expressing appreciation for the unique qualities that made each person special. Michael developed similar habits, showing particular sensitivity to the feelings and needs of others. His childhood was characterized by spontaneous expressions of affection and appreciation that seemed to flow naturally from growing up in a family culture that valued thoughtfulness and gratitude over material acquisition and conventional expressions of love. But the influence of our Christmas stone experience extended beyond individual character development to the overall atmosphere and values that characterized our family life. We became a family that celebrated creativity, appreciated simple pleasures, and found abundance in circumstances that others might have viewed as limiting or inadequate. This perspective proved particularly valuable as we navigated the various challenges that characterized family life during the 1980s and early 90s. And when economic pressures required us to make difficult decisions about spending priorities, we approached those decisions from a foundation of gratitude for what we already possessed rather than anxiety about what we might have to sacrifice. When career opportunities required geographical moves that separated us from extended family and familiar communities, we focused on the adventure and growth potential of new circumstances, rather than dwelling on what we were leaving behind. But when health challenges affected family members, we drew on the same principles to appreciate available support systems, existing strengths, and reasons for hope rather than becoming overwhelmed by limitations and difficulties. But importantly, the Christmas stone experience had taught us that love expresses itself most meaningfully through attention, creativity, and appreciation rather than through expensive purchases or elaborate gestures. This understanding influenced how we approached not just gift giving, but all aspects of family communication and relationship building. Sarah and I learned to regularly express specific appreciation for each other's contributions to family life, creating a marriage dynamic that supported growth and resilience during difficult periods. Instead of taking each other's efforts for granted or focusing on areas where we wish things were different, we practiced the kind of intentional gratitude that Sarah had pioneered with her Christmas stones. Our children grew up witnessing this pattern of appreciation and specific gratitude, absorbing lessons about how to notice and express the kinds of recognition that strengthen relationships and create emotional environments where people feel valued and supported. As Emma and Michael reached adolescence and young adulthood, they carried these principles into their friendships, romantic relationships, and eventually their own families. They understood that the most meaningful gifts are often those that demonstrate careful attention to the recipient's unique qualities and interests, that love expresses itself most powerfully through thoughtfulness and appreciation, and that abundance is often a matter of perspective rather than circumstance. And the financial pressures that had seemed so threatening during that Christmas of 1982 gradually eased as my career advanced and Sarah returned to full-time nursing. But the lessons we had learned during our most challenging period continued to influence our approach to money, priorities, and family celebrations even when our circumstances improved significantly, and we chose to maintain the gratitude practices and creative gift-giving traditions that had emerged from necessity, recognizing that they had contributed more to our family happiness than any material improvements in our standard of living. The stone tradition became a cherished family custom that we continued even when we could afford more expensive presents. And our holiday celebrations incorporated both traditional gifts and expressions of appreciation, creating a balance that honored both generosity and thoughtfulness, both material expressions of love and direct articulation of gratitude and recognition. This approach to celebrations and gift-giving attracted attention from friends and extended family members who began to adopt similar practices in their own families. And the stone tradition, or variations of it, spread to other families who were inspired by the combination of creativity, meaningfulness, and accessibility that characterized Sarah's Christmas morning innovation. Over the years, I have had numerous conversations with people who were facing their own financial challenges during holiday seasons and who found hope and practical guidance in the story of our Christmas stones. The universal themes of finding abundance in apparent scarcity, expressing love through creativity rather than expense, and focusing on gratitude rather than limitation resonated with people facing a wide variety of circumstances. But most importantly, the story served as a reminder that some of our most cherished family memories emerge from the times when we feel we have the least to offer, when we are forced to rely on love and creativity rather than resources and conventional solutions. As Sarah and I entered our retirement years, the perspective we had gained from that long ago Christmas morning proved invaluable for navigating the transitions and challenges that characterize later life. The gratitude practices we had developed helped us appreciate the opportunities and freedoms that retirement provided, rather than focusing on the limitations and losses that aging inevitably brings. The creative problem-solving skills we had honed during our years of financial challenge served us well as we faced new kinds of limitations related to health, mobility, and energy levels. Instead of viewing these changes as obstacles to continued happiness and fulfillment, we approached them as opportunities to develop new forms of creativity and different ways of finding joy and meaning. The appreciation habits we had cultivated throughout our marriage helped us support each other through the various health challenges and life transitions that affect most couples who are fortunate enough to share many decades together. And instead of taking each other for granted or focusing on areas where age had created changes we didn't welcome, we continued to practice the kind of specific gratitude that recognizes and celebrates the qualities that make each person irreplaceable. Our adult children, now dealing with their own financial pressures and family responsibilities, often turn to the principles they learned from our Christmas stone tradition when they face challenges that seem overwhelming, or when they worry about their ability to provide the kinds of experiences they want for their own children. Emma, now a mother of 3, has adapted the stone tradition to her family's circumstances, creating annual gratitude celebrations that help her children appreciate the abundance that exists in their family relationships rather than focusing on what they cannot afford or do not possess. Monhai, married with 2 children, uses variations of the stone principle in his approach to both family gift-giving and workplace relationships, expressing appreciation for qualities and contributions that might otherwise go unrecognized. Both of our children understand that meaningful relationships require intentional attention and regular expressions of appreciation, that creativity can often solve problems that money cannot address, and that abundance is frequently a matter of perspective rather than circumstance. Our grandchildren are growing up with an understanding that love expresses itself in many ways, that the most valuable gifts are often those that demonstrate thoughtful attention to what makes each person special, and that family happiness depends more on gratitude and appreciation than on material possessions or expensive experiences. They have heard the story of their grandparents' Christmas of stones many times, and they understand it as both family history and practical guidance for creating meaningful experiences regardless of financial circumstances. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of that Christmas morning in 1982 is the recognition that apparent limitations often contain hidden opportunities for growth, creativity, and deeper understanding of what truly matters in family life and human relationships. The financial pressure that had made traditional gift-giving impossible had created space for Sarah to develop an approach to expressing love that was more thoughtful, more personal, and ultimately more meaningful than anything we could have purchased. The circumstances that had filled me with anxiety and feelings of failure had become the catalyst for discovering forms of abundance that no economic downturn could threaten, and expressions of love that deepened rather than diminished our family relationships. The holiday season that had seemed destined to disappoint our children had instead provided them with their first lessons in creativity, gratitude, and the recognition that the most valuable gifts often cost nothing but time, attention, and willingness to notice and appreciate the love that already exists within families committed to supporting and cherishing each other. As I reflect on more than 4 decades of marriage and family life that followed that transformative Christmas morning, I am struck by how consistently the principles that Sarah's creativity revealed have contributed to our family's happiness, resilience, and sense of abundance regardless of our changing circumstances. The gratitude perspective that helped us recognize wealth in apparent poverty has enabled us to appreciate opportunities in every phase of life, from young parenthood through career building, from middle age through retirement, from health through illness, from independence through the various forms of interdependence that characterize aging. And the creative problem-solving approach that transforms stones into treasured gifts has served us well in addressing countless challenges that seemed impossible until we shifted our perspective from what we couldn't do to what we could do with the resources, relationships, and opportunities that were actually available to us. The appreciation habits that emerge from articulating specific reasons for gratitude have enriched every relationship in our lives, creating patterns of recognition and celebration that have deepened our connections with each other, with our children and grandchildren, with friends and community members, and with the countless people who have contributed to our lives in ways both large and small. Most importantly, the understanding that love expresses itself most powerfully through attention, creativity, and thoughtful recognition rather than through expensive gestures or elaborate expressions has provided a foundation for relationships that have deepened and strengthened over time rather than becoming routine or taken for granted. The Christmas morning that had seemed destined to reveal our inadequacy as providers instead revealed our abundance as a family capable of creating meaning, joy, and lasting memories through love, creativity, and mutual appreciation. The stones that had seemed like symbols of our poverty became emblems of our wealth when they were accompanied by notes that articulated the countless ways we were rich in everything that truly mattered for family happiness and lasting fulfillment. The holiday tradition that emerged from apparent limitation became one of our family's most treasured customs, providing a template for expressing love and appreciation that has enhanced every celebration and strengthened every relationship for more than 40 years. For those of you who may be facing your own challenges with holiday expectations, financial pressures, or concerns about your ability to provide the kinds of experiences you think your families deserve, I hope the story of our Christmas stones will serve as both inspiration and practical guidance. The gift of perspective that Sarah created by focusing on gratitude rather than limitation is available to anyone willing to take time to notice and appreciate the abundance that exists in relationships characterized by love, commitment, and mutual support. The creative approach to meaningful gift-giving that she pioneered can be adapted to any family's circumstances, requiring only thoughtfulness, attention, and willingness to express appreciation for the qualities that make each family member irreplaceable and cherished. And the abundance that she helped us discover by shifting our focus from what we couldn't afford to what we already possessed is accessible to families in any financial circumstances, because it depends on recognition and appreciation rather than acquisition and expense. Your love for your family, expressed through intentional attention and creative appreciation, is the most valuable gift you have to offer, and the foundation upon which all meaningful holiday experiences and lasting family memories are built. Your capacity for creativity and problem solving, whatever your previous experience or artistic background, is sufficient to develop approaches to celebration and gift-giving that are more personal and ultimately more satisfying than anything available through conventional commercial channels. Your family's potential for gratitude and mutual appreciation, whatever your current challenges or limitations, contains the seeds of abundance that can transform any circumstances into opportunities for meaning, connection, and joy. And the Christmas that we thought would be our worst became our most treasured. Not because our circumstances changed, but because Sarah's creativity helped us see our circumstances clearly. The morning that had seemed destined to disappoint became the source of our family's most cherished tradition and most important lessons about love, creativity, and the true meaning of abundance. At your current challenges, whatever they may be, contain similar potential for discovery, growth, and the development of new ways of creating meaning and expressing love within your family relationships. Trust in your capacity to find creative solutions when conventional options are not available. Have confidence in your family's ability to appreciate expressions of love that cost nothing but time and thoughtful attention. Remember that the most treasured family memories often emerge from the times when we feel we have the least to offer, but discover that love and creativity are more than sufficient to create experiences that last a lifetime. The stones that Sarah wrapped in newspaper more than 40 years ago continue to sit in our bedroom, along with the carefully preserved notes that transformed ordinary rocks into extraordinary expressions of love and appreciation. They serve as daily reminders that abundance is often a matter of perspective, that creativity can solve problems that money cannot address, and that the most valuable gifts are those that help people feel seen, appreciated, and loved for who they truly are. But more than objects of sentimental value, those stones represent principles that have guided our family through 4 decades of changes, challenges, and celebrations. They remind us that love expresses itself most meaningfully through attention and appreciation, that constraints often foster creativity and innovation, that gratitude can transform any circumstances into opportunities for recognition of existing blessings. As we continue into what we hope will be many more years of marriage, family relationships, and community connections, we carry with us the lessons that emerged from that December morning when apparent poverty revealed actual wealth, when creative love transformed limitation into abundance, when a simple gesture of wrapping stones in newspaper became the foundation for a lifetime of meaningful gift-giving and intentional appreciation. The Christmas spirit that Sarah captured in her creative response to our financial limitations, the spirit of finding abundance in apparent scarcity, expressing love through thoughtfulness rather than expense, and creating meaning through creativity and gratitude, remains as relevant today as it was 40 years ago. In our current cultural moment, when commercial pressures often obscure the deeper meanings of holiday celebrations, when financial stress can overshadow the joy that celebrations are meant to create, when social media comparisons can make any family's circumstances seem inadequate compared to others' apparent abundance, the principles that emerge from our Christmas of Stones offer both comfort and practical guidance. Your family's capacity for love, creativity, and mutual appreciation is sufficient to create holiday experiences that are more meaningful than any that money can buy. And your willingness to focus on gratitude rather than limitation, on thoughtfulness rather than expense, on the abundance that already exists in your relationships rather than the things you cannot afford, can transform any circumstances into opportunities for celebration and connection. The stones are still with us, but the lessons they represent have spread far beyond our family to influence countless other families who have discovered their own versions of creative gift-giving, intentional gratitude, and the recognition that love expressed through attention and appreciation creates more lasting joy than any material acquisition. For those of you who are parents or grandparents concerned about providing meaningful holiday experiences for your children, for those facing financial challenges that make traditional gift-giving difficult, for those who feel overwhelmed by commercial pressures and cultural expectations about what constitutes a proper Christmas celebration, I hope our story will remind you that the most treasured family memories often emerge from the simplest expressions of creativity and love. Your children and grandchildren will remember the quality of attention you give them, the thoughtfulness behind your expressions of love, and the atmosphere of gratitude and appreciation you create in your family far longer than they will remember any specific presents or elaborate celebrations. The abundance that matters most in family life, the abundance of love, attention, appreciation, and mutual support is available to every family regardless of financial circumstances, because it depends on the choices you make about where to focus your attention and how to express the care you feel for the people who matter most in your life. The Christmas spirit that Sarah captured in those newspaper-wrapped stones, the spirit that recognizes wealth in relationships, finds creativity in constraints, and expresses love through thoughtful appreciation, is available to every family willing to shift perspective from what they cannot provide to what they can offer through time, attention, and heartfelt recognition of the qualities that make each family member precious and irreplaceable. The stones sit quietly in our bedroom now, tangible reminders of a Christmas morning that transformed our understanding of abundance, gift-giving, and the true foundations of family happiness. But the lessons they represent continue to influence our daily choices about how to express love, create meaningful experiences, and find joy in circumstances that might initially seem limiting or inadequate. Your stones, literal or metaphorical, are waiting to be discovered in your own family's capacity for creativity, gratitude, and thoughtful appreciation. The abundance you seek already exists in the love you share, the attention you can give, and the countless opportunities for recognizing and celebrating the qualities that make your family members uniquely wonderful and deserving of appreciation. The Christmas that changed our lives began with newspaper and stones and became a foundation for decades of meaningful celebration and intentional gratitude. And your Christmas, whatever form it takes, contains similar potential for discovery, creativity, and the recognition that the most valuable gifts often cost nothing but the willingness to see clearly, express appreciation honestly, and create meaning through love rather than expense. Trust in your capacity to create meaningful experiences through thoughtfulness and creativity. Have confidence in your family's ability to appreciate expressions of love that cost nothing but time and attention. Remember that abundance is often a matter of perspective, that creativity emerges from constraints, and that the Christmas spirit has more to do with recognizing and sharing the love that already exists than with creating love through elaborate preparation or expensive acquisition. The lessons from our Christmas of Stones continue to guide us. More than 40 years later, as we navigate the opportunities and challenges of each new holiday season, they remind us that love expressed through thoughtful attention creates more lasting joy than any material gift. That gratitude can transform any circumstances into reasons for celebration, and that the most meaningful family traditions often emerge from apparent limitations rather than obvious advantages. That your family's story is still being written. Your most treasured Christmas memories may still be ahead of you, waiting to be created through the kind of creativity, love, and intentional appreciation that can transform any circumstances into opportunities for meaning, connection, and lasting joy. The stones that seemed like symbols of our poverty became emblems of our wealth. The Christmas that appeared destined to disappoint became our most cherished family memory. The morning that began with anxiety about what we couldn't provide became a celebration of everything we already possessed. And your stones are waiting. Your abundance is present. Your most meaningful Christmas may be the one when you discover, like we did, that love expressed through creativity and appreciation is more valuable than any gift that money can buy, and that the true Christmas spirit lives not in what we can afford to give, but in our willingness to recognize and celebrate the countless ways we are already blessed beyond measure. The newspaper wrapping has long since been recycled, but the stones remain, along with the carefully preserved notes that transform them from ordinary objects into extraordinary expressions of love. They sit in our bedroom as daily reminders that creativity can solve problems that money cannot address, that gratitude can reveal abundance where others see only limitation, and that the most meaningful gifts are those that help people feel truly seen, deeply appreciated, and unconditionally loved. But perhaps most importantly, they remind us that the best chapters of our family story often begin with the words, "We thought we had nothing, but we discovered we had everything that mattered." Your story, my dear friends, is still being written. Your stones are waiting to be discovered. Your abundance is ready to be recognized. Your most meaningful Christmas may be just ahead, waiting for the moment when you realize, as we did on that snowy morning in 1982, that love expressed through thoughtful creativity is the greatest gift of all, and that families rich in appreciation and gratitude are wealthy beyond any measure that money can provide. The Christmas we had nothing became the Christmas we discovered everything. The stones wrapped in newspaper became our family treasures. The morning that seemed destined to disappoint became the foundation for a lifetime of meaningful celebration and intentional love. Your Christmas is waiting, Mom. Your abundance is present, Jim. Your most treasured family memories may emerge from the very circumstances that initially seem most limiting, when creativity and love reveal the wealth that has been there all along, hidden in plain sight, waiting for hearts wise enough to recognize that the greatest gifts often come wrapped not in expensive paper, but in the simple, profound recognition that love shared is abundance multiplied. And that gratitude expressed is joy made visible. The dance continues. My friends, the music is still playing, and there are still stones to be wrapped, notes to be written, and moments of profound abundance waiting to be discovered in the midst of what the world might call limitation, but what love reveals to be opportunity dressed in humble clothing, ready to transform any family willing to see clearly, love deeply, and express appreciation for the countless ways that ordinary moments become extraordinary when viewed through eyes grateful for the abundant blessings that surround us always, waiting only for recognition, celebration, and the kind of creative expression that turns stones into treasures and newspapers into wrapping, fit for the most precious gifts of all.